Close your eyes for a moment. It is the year 1247. Somewhere in the hills of Umbria, in central Italy, a Franciscan monastery sits in the blue-gray light before dawn. The stone walls are cold. The chapel bell has just rung for lauds, the first prayer of the morning, sung before the sun appears. A monk named Brother Giacomo moves through the cloister garden in the dark. He knows the path without light. He has walked it every morning for 23 years. His sandals are wet from the dew. His breath makes small clouds in the October air. He does not go to the chapel first. Not yet. He goes to the small stone room beside the kitchen, the herbarium, the room that every monastery in medieval Europe maintained as its pharmacy, its laboratory, its library of living medicine. He lights a single tallow candle. He reaches for a ceramic jar sealed with cloth and twine. Inside, raw honey, the color of dark amber, from the monastery's hives on the southern slope. He sets it on the wooden table. He reaches for a second vessel, wine vinegar, thick and cloudy, still alive with the mother culture that has been fermenting in the monastery's cellar since before Brother Giacomo arrived as a novice. He reaches for a third thing, a bundle of dried herbs hanging from the beam overhead. He brings it to the table, unties it, opens it to the candlelight. Rosemary, sage, thyme. He selects his portions with the practiced certainty of a man who has made this preparation 10,000 times. He combines them in a clay cup. He stirs slowly. He adds a small amount of water heated in the embers. He waits. He prays. He drinks. This is not a ritual he invented. It is not a ritual his teacher invented. The instructions for this preparation, this specific combination of honey, vinegar, and herbs, appear in a manuscript in the monastery's library that is itself a copy of something written in ancient Rome, which was itself a copy of something even older. Brother Giacomo does not think of himself as doing something ancient. He thinks of himself as doing something necessary, the way you think of eating, the way you think of sleeping, the way you think of breathing. The morning preparation is simply what you do when you wake up. It is what keeps the body strong and the mind clear for the day's work ahead. It is what the monastery has always done, as long as anyone can remember, as long as the manuscripts can show. He finishes the cup. He washes it. He returns to the cloister. The chapel bell rings again. The monks file in for prayer. By sunrise, the monastery is fully awake. Now come forward 800 years. It is this morning, somewhere in a city, any country, a person wakes up. They are tired. They have been tired for months. Not the tired of a hard day's work, but the deeper tired, the tired that sleep doesn't fix, the tired that accumulates over years like sediment. They go to the kitchen. They reach for coffee. They drink it quickly, standing over the sink, already thinking about the first obligation of the day. The coffee creates a brief clarity that fades within 2 hours, leaving a heaviness that coffee can't fix, requiring more coffee, creating a cycle that has gone on so long they have forgotten what it felt like to wake up without needing it. They have never heard of oxymel. They do not know that in the monastery in Umbria 800 years ago, a monk was starting his morning with a preparation that supported his liver, his immune system, his digestion, and his mental clarity, without the cortisol spike, without the adrenal depletion, without the dependency cycle. They do not know that this preparation existed in ancient Greece 2,000 years before Brother Giacomo, that it was prescribed by physicians in ancient Korea under a different name, that it was the morning tonic of the Mughal court in India, that it was sold by street vendors in medieval Moscow, that it was the daily drink of the peasants and the emperors of the Mediterranean for 3,000 years before the first tea leaf was ever brewed. They do not know that every civilization that ever existed on Earth, before the arrival of tea and coffee, independently developed a version of the same thing: honey, vinegar, herbs, water. 4 ingredients, infinite variations. One discovery, made independently on every inhabited continent. Today, I am going to tell you the whole story. I am going to take you to ancient Greece, where the word was first written, to the monasteries of medieval Korea, where monks kept the same preparation under a different name, to the Mughal court of India, where it was flavored with roses and cardamom, to the winter markets of medieval Moscow, where it was sold from copper kettles on street corners, to the fishing villages of the Mediterranean, where it was taken every morning before the boats went out. I am going to tell you what is actually in this preparation, what the honey does, what the vinegar does, what the herbs do, and why every culture on Earth arrived at these same 3 ingredients independently. And at the end, I'm going to give you the simplest version. 3 ingredients, available right now, costing less than you spend on coffee in a single week. If no one in your life has ever told you about any of this, if this is the first time you are hearing that a practice this old, this universal, this well-documented exists, subscribe right now. Hit the bell icon, because this channel exists specifically to recover things that were known for thousands of years and forgotten in a single generation. And if you think someone in your family or your community deserves to know this, if you think of someone right now who wakes up exhausted every morning and reaches for coffee and wonders why they are always tired, share this video with them before you finish watching it. They may thank you for it. Now, let us begin at the beginning. The word oxymel comes from ancient Greek, oxys, sharp, acidic, meli, honey, sharp honey, acid honey, honey and vinegar together. The preparation appears in the Hippocratic Corpus, the collection of medical texts attributed to Hippocrates and his school, written in Greece in the 5th and 4th centuries BCE. It appears in the works of Dioscorides, the Greek physician whose De Materia Medica was the foundational text of Western pharmacology for 1,500 years. It appears in the works of Galen, the Roman physician whose influence on European medicine lasted until the 17th century. Hippocrates prescribed it for acute fevers, for respiratory infections, for the loosening of phlegm, for digestive complaints, for what he called difficult breathing, the conditions we would now call bronchitis and asthma. Dioscorides gave detailed instructions for preparation, specific ratios of honey to vinegar, specific herbs to add for specific conditions, instructions for how long to combine and heat the preparation to achieve different effects. Galen built on both, adding refinements for the treatment of what he called chronic melancholy, the condition of prolonged low energy, low mood, and physical heaviness that we would now recognize as a combination of chronic fatigue, liver congestion, and immune dysregulation. These were not fringe practitioners. Hippocrates is called the father of Western medicine. Dioscorides was the primary authority for Western pharmacology for a millennium and a half. Galen's medical system dominated European medicine for over 1,000 years, and all of them prescribed oxymel, not as a curiosity, not as one option among many, as a foundational daily preparation, as medicine so basic and so reliable that it barely required justification, the way we do not need to justify recommending that people drink water. But here is what makes oxymel remarkable in a way that goes beyond its effectiveness. Here's the thing that stopped me when I first encountered it, and that I think will stop you too. The ancient Greeks did not invent it. When Hippocrates wrote about oxymel in the 5th century BCE, he was not documenting a new discovery. He was recording an ancient practice. He was writing down what the people around him had been doing, as far back as anyone could trace, for as long as the memory of medicine extended. He didn't know where the practice came from. He didn't need to. It simply was, the way the sun was, the way the seasons were, a basic fact of medical life that needed no origin story. But over the following centuries, as exploration expanded the known world, and as travelers and scholars made contact with distant civilizations, something remarkable became apparent. Every civilization had a version of it, not a similar version, not an approximation. The same foundational principle: honey, fermented acidic liquid, herbs, water. Different names, different specific herbs, different precise ratios, but the same three core ingredients combined in the same basic way, used for the same broad purposes: morning vitality, digestive support, immune resilience, respiratory health. This is not cultural borrowing. The civilizations that developed these preparations had no contact with each other. They could not have copied each other. They arrived at the same answer independently, from different starting points, in different centuries, in different parts of the world. This is what philosophers of science call convergent discovery, when the same solution is independently reached by different people solving the same problem, because the solution is genuinely optimal. When multiple civilizations across the world independently arrive at the same answer, they are telling us something important about the problem. The problem was human health. The answer was honey, fermented acid, and herbs. Let me take you to each of the civilizations that found it. It begins with bees. The Mediterranean basin, 10,000 years ago, was covered in wild herbs: thyme, rosemary, oregano, sage, lavender. The entire landscape was a pharmacy that bees had been harvesting for millions of years before humans arrived. Wild honey in the ancient Mediterranean was not the mild, homogeneous product in the supermarket bottle. It was concentrated medicine. Every hive made honey from whatever grew nearby, and in the mountains of Greece and Italy and the hills of the Levant, what grew nearby was thyme, sage, rosemary, and dozens of medicinal plants. The honey absorbed their compounds. Every jar was unique. Every jar was already a medicine. The ancient Greeks observed something about honey that modern food science has now confirmed with remarkable precision. They observed that honey preserved things, that food stored in honey did not spoil, that wounds packed with honey healed faster than wounds exposed to air, that honey seemed to actively prevent the corruption, the rotting, the infection that destroyed everything else. They were observing the antimicrobial properties of hydrogen peroxide produced by the glucose oxidase enzyme in honey, the osmotic pressure that desiccates microorganisms, the defensin-1 peptide that has activity against a broad spectrum of bacteria. They did not know these mechanisms, but they saw the effects reliably, repeatedly, across generations of observation. Then they discovered vinegar. The discovery of vinegar is as old as the discovery of wine, because vinegar is simply what wine becomes if you don't drink it fast enough. In the warm Mediterranean climate, wine left in an open vessel would transform within days. The acidity increased. The flavor became sharp and complex. The liquid that remained was something new, something that also preserved food, that also seemed to prevent infection, that tasted completely different from the wine it came from. They were observing the action of Acetobacter bacteria converting the alcohol in wine to acetic acid. They were observing the formation of the mother culture, the living colony of bacteria and acetic acid that continues to ferment, and that is the source of the most medicinal properties of raw, unfiltered vinegar. And then someone, we will never know when, we will never know who, mixed the two together: honey and vinegar. The result was something that was neither honey nor vinegar, but both simultaneously. sweet and sharp at the same time. The sweetness of the honey balanced the acidity of the vinegar. The acidity of the vinegar cut through the heaviness of the honey. Together they created a flavor that was, and this is important, inherently pleasant to drink. Not medicine that had to be choked down. Medicine that people wanted to drink. And then the herbs came in. The herbs of the Mediterranean, thyme, rosemary, sage, oregano, lavender, were already understood as medicine before oxymel existed. They were used as preparations in their own right, teas, infused oils, poultices. Adding them to oxymel was not inspired guesswork, it was methodical combination. What happens when we add thyme to honey and vinegar? What happens when we add rosemary? The ancient Greek physician was experimenting systematically over generations and recording what worked. What they found was that the combination was more than the sum of its parts. The honey and vinegar together extracted and preserved the active compounds from the herbs more effectively than water alone. The resulting preparation was more potent, more stable, and more medicinally concentrated than any of its components separately. They did not know they were observing enhanced phytochemical extraction through the combined action of osmotic pressure, acidic solvent, and enzymatic activity. They simply knew it worked better, and they used it for everything. Hippocrates used a simple oxymel, honey, vinegar, water, and salt, as his primary treatment for acute respiratory infections. He prescribed it to be drunk warm, multiple times daily until symptoms resolved. He noted that it helped the patient expectorate, helped them bring up the phlegm that was blocking the airways. He noted that it reduced fever. He noted that patients treated with it recovered faster than those who received other preparations. He was right about all of it, and we now know exactly why he was right. But we will come to the science after we finish the history, because the history is not finished, not even close. Come east now, far east, to the Korean peninsula in the 12th century of the Common Era. In the mountains above what is now the city of Gyeongju, the ancient capital of the Silla Kingdom, there is a Buddhist monastery. It is November. The first snow has fallen on the mountain passes. The roads from the valley have become difficult. The monastery is, for practical purposes, closed in until spring. The monks have prepared for this, not with anxiety, but with the long-practiced competence of people who have wintered in these mountains for generations and know exactly what will be needed. In the monastery cellar, there are ceramic urns sealed with clay. Each urn is labeled in careful characters. One contains fermented ginger root that has been sitting in vinegar and honey since the summer, slowly mellowing, slowly concentrating. One contains fermented jujube, the small red dates that grow on the mountainside, preserved in the same preparation. One contains dried roots of ginger, alongside dried chrysanthemum flowers, dried jujube fruit, and a preparation of rice vinegar with raw honey that has been fermenting since early autumn. The preparation is called, in different forms, sikye or sujeongwa, sweet fermented beverages that the monks prepare each autumn for winter use. The tradition is ancient. The monks learned it from the monks before them. Those monks learned it from the monks before them. The chain of transmission extends back further than the monastery's written records can reach. Every morning in winter, the abbot prepares a portion of the fermented ginger preparation. He dilutes it with hot water. He adds a small amount of pine nuts. He distributes it to the community before morning meditation. This is the Korean version of what the Greek physician was prescribing 2,000 years earlier and 10,000 kilometers away. Honey, fermented acidic liquid, medicinal herbs, hot water. The Korean tradition adds specificity that the Greek tradition does not. Specific herbs for specific seasons. Ginger and cinnamon in winter when the body needs warming. Chrysanthemum and green tea in summer when the body needs cooling. Jujube, the red date, year-round as a blood tonic and nervous system support. The preparation is calibrated to the season and the condition, with a precision that reflects centuries of clinical refinement. Korean traditional medicine, Hanyak, is one of the most systematically documented traditional medical systems in the world. Its texts, compiled over centuries, contain detailed records of specific preparations, specific dosings, specific clinical observations. The fermented honey and vinegar preparations appear throughout, used for what Korean physicians called gi, what we might translate as vital energy, and specifically for the conditions that modern medicine would recognize as immune dysfunction, chronic fatigue, and the systemic inflammation that underlies so many chronic diseases. In the 14th century, a physician named John Sun Wee compiled the Hyangyak Jipsongbang, a comprehensive collection of indigenous Korean medical formulas. It contains over 10,000 formulas, many of them involving fermented honey and acidic preparations with medicinal herbs. The work was commissioned by the king specifically to document indigenous Korean medicine that worked, that had been working for centuries, independent of Chinese or any other foreign influence. The king wanted to know what Korean medicine knew, what it had always known. What it had always known, in part, was oxymel, under a different name, in a different flavor, in a different ceramic vessel, in a monastery on a different mountain, but the same preparation, the same 3 foundational ingredients, the same discovery. Come south and west now, to India. In the Charaka Samhita, the foundational text of Ayurvedic medicine, compiled in its earliest form in approximately 300 BCE, there is a preparation called Madhu Arishta. Madhu, honey. Arishta, a fermented preparation using bitter herbs and acidic ingredients. The Charaka Samhita is explicit about the therapeutic category this preparation belongs to. It is classified as a rasayana, a category of medicines specifically designed for rejuvenation, longevity, and the restoration of vital function. Not just treatment of illness, but the daily maintenance of health, the prevention of disease before it begins, the optimization of the body's inherent capacity for health. In Ayurveda, health is not simply the absence of disease. Health is a condition of positive vitality, of digestion working well, of the liver processing efficiently, of the immune system balanced and responsive, of the mind clear and the body energetic. Rasayana medicines are those that maintain and restore this positive vitality. Honey and fermented preparations occupy a central place in Ayurvedic Rasayana practice. The texts distinguish carefully between different types of honey. Single flower honey from different plants has different therapeutic properties. The texts distinguish between different types of acidic fermented preparations. Different herbs fermented in different media produce preparations with different specific effects. But the core of the practice is consistent. Honey, fermented acidic preparation, medicinal herbs, taken daily, not as medicine for illness, but as maintenance of health, as the foundation of the morning before food is eaten, before the day begins. The Mughal emperors of India, who ruled from the 16th to the 19th centuries, and who combined Persian, Central Asian, and Indian cultural traditions in their courts, adopted this Ayurvedic practice into what became known as Unani Tib, the Greco-Islamic medical tradition that the Mughals patronized alongside Ayurveda. The court physicians prepared what they called sharabs, honeyed, fermented, herbed preparations that were served at the court each morning. The sharbat of the Mughal court was honey, rosewater, vinegar, cardamom, and sometimes saffron. Drunk cool in summer, drunk warm with ginger and black pepper in winter. It was the daily morning preparation of the emperor. It was the daily morning preparation of the palace physicians. And through the diffusion of Mughal culture into the broader population of the subcontinent, it was the daily morning preparation of millions of ordinary people in India for 3 centuries. The tradition persists today in reduced and imperfect form. The word sharbat survives in Hindi and Urdu as a word for sweet, flavored drinks, a shadow of the original meaning. The practice of drinking diluted honey with vinegar and herbs survives in the preparations that Ayurvedic practitioners still prescribe. But the knowledge of what it is, why it works, and what it does in the body, that knowledge has largely been lost in the transition to a world dominated by packaged beverages and pharmaceutical medicine. The preparation still exists. The knowledge of its meaning has been waiting to be recovered. Come north now, far north, to the coldest of the civilizations that found this preparation. Moscow in the 14th century, December. The temperature is -20 degrees Celsius. The Moskva River is frozen solid. The streets are packed with snow that will not melt until March. On the central market square, among the merchants selling furs and grain and icons, there is a different kind of vendor. He carries a large copper vessel on his back, an ornate urn with a spigot at the bottom, and a burning coal chamber inside that keeps the contents hot. He moves through the crowd, calling his product, "Spittin', hot spittin'." Customers hold out their kopecks. He fills their cups from the spigot. The steam rises in the frozen air. They wrap both hands around the cup and drink. Spittin'. The word comes from the Russian spivat, to whip together, to combine. It is honey and vinegar combined and whipped together with herbs and spices that differ by region and by vendor. Ginger, cloves, cinnamon, black pepper, cardamom, bay leaf, St. John's wort, mint. Boiled together until the honey and vinegar are fully incorporated, then diluted and served hot. It is the Russian version of oxymel. Spittin' has been documented in Russian historical records since the 12th century. It was the everyday beverage of the Russian people for over 700 years, drunk by peasants in the fields, by soldiers on campaign, by merchants at market, by monks in monasteries, by the nobility in their estates. It was sold on every street corner in every Russian city. It was the ubiquitous morning and evening drink, the cold weather tonic, the thing you reached for when you were tired or cold or unwell. Russian folk medicine credited Spittin with immunity against the infectious diseases that killed so many people in the crowded medieval city. Physicians of the 18th and 19th centuries documented its use for what they called catarrhal conditions, respiratory infections, persistent cough, winter fatigue. They documented it for digestive complaints, for liver conditions, for the general fatigue of the winter months when fresh food was unavailable and the body was running on stored reserves. When tea arrived in Russia in the 17th century, imported first as a luxury good and gradually becoming an affordable commodity, it began to displace Spittin among the urban population. When the Soviet state industrialized the beverage market in the 20th century, Spittin effectively disappeared. Tea became the Russian hot drink. Coffee followed. Within 2 generations, a beverage that had been a daily staple for 700 years had been forgotten so completely that most Russians today have never heard the word. The Speeton cellars are gone from the Moscow market. The copper urns have gone to museums. The vendors who called their preparation through the frozen streets of the medieval city have been replaced by coffee chains and supermarket tea. But the recipe exists. The documents exist. The ingredients, honey, vinegar, ginger, cloves, cinnamon, St. John's wort, are available right now in any market in Russia, in any market in the world. The preparation can be made in 20 minutes in any kitchen. The knowledge was not destroyed. It was simply put down, and it can be picked up again. Let us return now to Brother Giacomo in his monastery in Umbria, because his story is not finished. What Brother Giacomo was making in that stone room before dawn was not a purely Italian preparation. The manuscript in the monastery library from which the formula ultimately derived was a medieval copy of a classical text, a copy of a copy of a copy of Dioscorides, or Galen, or one of the anonymous compilers of the pharmacological knowledge of the ancient world. The Benedictine monasteries of medieval Europe were not just places of prayer. They were the repositories of all surviving classical knowledge. The scriptorium, the copying room, was where the knowledge of ancient Greece and Rome survived the fall of the empire and the fragmentation of the early medieval period. Monk after monk, century after century, copied the medical texts alongside the theological ones. And so the oxymel of ancient Greece survived in the herbarium of medieval Italy. The preparation that Hippocrates prescribed in Athens in 400 BCE was being prepared in Umbria in 1247 CE in exactly the same way, because the text describing it had been carefully preserved and transmitted. But here is what Brother Giacomo did not know, that the preparation he was making every morning was also being made in a monastery in Korea, in a palace in India, in a market in Moscow. He thought of oxymel as classical Mediterranean medicine, as the legacy of Greece and Rome that his monastery had preserved through the dark centuries. He did not know that he was participating in a practice so fundamental to human health that it had been independently discovered by every major civilization that ever existed. He did not need to know. He just knew it worked. And so did they all. Now let us talk about why they were all right. Because oxymel is not effective because of tradition. It is not effective because of faith or culture or the placebo effect of centuries of use. It is effective because of specific, documented, measurable biological mechanisms that modern pharmacology has now confirmed with the same precision that it confirms the mechanism of pharmaceutical drugs. Let us take the 3 components one at a time. Raw honey. Raw honey, unfiltered, unpasteurized, still containing the full complement of enzymes, pollen, antimicrobial compounds, and beneficial microorganisms that pasteurized commercial honey destroys, is one of the most pharmacologically complex, naturally occurring substances on Earth. The primary antimicrobial mechanism is hydrogen peroxide, produced continuously in honey by the enzyme glucose oxidase. This enzyme remains active in raw honey and produces a sustained, low-level antimicrobial effect that pasteurized honey loses because heat inactivates the enzyme. Honey also contains defensin-1, a peptide produced by the bees themselves as an immune compound with broad-spectrum antibacterial activity. It contains methylglyoxal, particularly concentrated in manuka honey, which has antimicrobial activity through a mechanism independent of the peroxide pathway. It contains flavonoids, particularly pinosembrin, chrysin, and quercetin, with anti-inflammatory activity. It contains phenolic acids with antioxidant activity that exceeds most fruits and vegetables on a gram-for-gram basis. The osmotic pressure of honey, its high sugar concentration, creates an environment in which bacteria cannot survive because water is drawn out of their cells faster than they can function. Raw honey is also a prebiotic. Its oligosaccharides, complex sugars that resist digestion in the small intestine, pass to the large intestine and selectively feed beneficial bacterial populations, particularly Bifidobacterium and Lactobacillus species. A 2020 meta-analysis published in Nutrients analyzed 26 clinical trials on raw honey for various applications and confirmed its antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and prebiotic properties across diverse populations. For the liver specifically, honey's polyphenols have been shown to protect hepatocytes from oxidative damage, promote glutathione synthesis in liver cells, and reduce the hepatic inflammation that drives fatty liver disease. A 2019 study in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry found that raw honey polyphenols significantly reduced inflammatory cytokine production in liver cells under oxidative stress conditions. But the honey in oxymel is not just honey. It is honey that has been combined with vinegar, which means it has been exposed to the acidity that changes how the honey's compounds behave in the body. Some of the honey's larger polyphenols are broken down into smaller, more bioavailable fragments by the acetic acid. The combination produces a preparation that delivers honey's active compounds more effectively than honey alone. Raw apple cider vinegar with the mother. The mother. This is the crucial detail that separates medicinal vinegar from the clear, filtered, shelf-stable vinegar in most kitchens. The mother culture in raw, unfiltered vinegar is a complex, living community of bacteria, primarily Acetobacter species, that have been converting alcohol to acetic acid in the fermentation vessel. When you look into a bottle of raw apple cider vinegar with the mother, you see the mother floating as a web of brownish strands, the biofilm of the living bacterial culture. This culture is not just aesthetically different from filtered vinegar. It is pharmacologically different. The mother contains additional organic acids, malic acid, citric acid, tartaric acid, that filtered vinegar loses. It contains additional polyphenols from the apple fermentation that filtration removes. It contains enzymes that remain active in the raw preparation but are destroyed by pasteurization and filtration. The primary compound, acetic acid, is present in both raw and filtered vinegar, but acetic acid's effects in the body are significant enough to justify the entire preparation on their own. Acetic acid inhibits two enzymes that are central to blood sugar regulation: disaccharidase enzymes in the small intestine that break down complex carbohydrates, and amylase enzymes that digest starch. This inhibition slows carbohydrate digestion and reduces the speed and magnitude of the post-meal blood sugar rise, the glycemic response, that drives insulin release, fat storage, and the metabolic inflammation at the root of so much modern chronic disease. A 2019 systematic review in Diabetes Research and Clinical Practice analyzed multiple randomized controlled trials on vinegar consumption for blood sugar management and confirmed consistent reductions in fasting blood glucose and post-meal blood glucose in both diabetic and pre-diabetic populations. Acetic acid also activates AMPK, the cellular energy sensor that signals the body to burn fat for fuel rather than store it. AMPK activation is the same mechanism as the diabetes drug metformin. Raw apple cider vinegar activates AMPK through its acetic acid content, which is why traditional medicine's observation that vinegar preparations support healthy body weight is now confirmed by molecular pharmacology. The malic acid in raw apple cider vinegar participates in the citric acid cycle, the primary energy-generating pathway in every cell in the body. It is an intermediate compound in cellular respiration, This is why vinegar preparations have been associated with improved energy production in traditional medicine across cultures, because the malic acid is literally supporting the chemistry of cellular energy generation. For the liver, acetic acid reduces fat synthesis in hepatocytes through the AMPK pathway, and raw apple cider vinegar's polyphenols have been shown to reduce hepatic inflammation through NF-kappa B inhibition. The combination of anti-steatotic and anti-inflammatory effects in the liver makes raw apple cider vinegar a genuine liver tonic, which is exactly how every traditional medicine system that used it classified it. The herbs. The specific herbs used in oxymel vary across civilizations and traditions, but the most universally used, the herbs that appear in the Mediterranean, the Korean, the Indian, and the Russian versions, are ginger, thyme, rosemary, and cinnamon. Let us take them each briefly. Ginger. The gingerols and shogols in ginger are simultaneously anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, digestive stimulating, and circulatory enhancing. Ginger promotes the secretion of digestive enzymes. It reduces nausea. It stimulates bile flow from the liver. It reduces the inflammatory cytokines, particularly TNF-alpha and IL-1-beta, that drive chronic systemic inflammation. In the context of oxymel, the acetic acid in the vinegar extracts gingerols from the dried ginger more effectively than hot water alone, creating a ginger preparation that is more concentrated and more bioavailable than ginger tea. Thyme. Thymol, the primary active compound in thyme, is one of the most potent, naturally occurring antimicrobial compounds identified. It is effective against a broad spectrum of bacteria and many fungi. It is directly relevant to respiratory health, which is why thyme appears in every traditional oxymel used for colds, coughs, and respiratory infections. The volatile oils of thyme, delivered in the steam of a warm oxymel preparation, reach the respiratory mucosa directly through inhalation, as well as systemically through digestion. Rosemary. Rosmarinic acid in rosemary inhibits GABA transaminase in the brain, increasing available GABA and producing mild anxiolytic and cognitive clarity effects. The 1,8-cineol in rosemary crosses the blood-brain barrier and inhibits acetylcholinesterase, the same mechanism as Alzheimer's drugs. Taking rosemary as part of a morning preparation is not simply tradition. It is cognitive support, delivered daily, in a form that has been sustaining the attention and clarity of monks, scholars, and physicians for 3,000 years. Cinnamon. Cinnamaldehyde and procyanidins in cinnamon are among the most potent naturally occurring AMPK activators known. They also inhibit the enzyme protein tyrosine phosphatase 1b, an insulin signaling inhibitor, improving insulin sensitivity through a mechanism that no other natural compound duplicates exactly. In the Russian spitin and the Korean fermented preparations, cinnamon was added specifically for its warming and metabolic effects, effects that modern pharmacology has now confirmed operate through specific identified molecular pathways. The combination of honey, vinegar, and herbs is not simply additive. The components interact. The vinegar enhances the extraction and bioavailability of the herb's active compounds. The honey's osmotic activity concentrates the preparation and stabilizes it. The herb's compounds modify how the honey and vinegar act in the body. The gingerols enhance digestive absorption. The thymol reduces the bacterial load in the gut that the vinegar must counteract. The rosmarinic acid from rosemary and the cinnamaldehyde from cinnamon contribute their own anti-inflammatory and metabolic regulating effects. What results is a preparation that is genuinely more than the sum of its parts, which is what traditional medicine across all cultures observed empirically and which pharmacology is now confirming mechanistically. The question that needs to be asked is this: if oxymel was this effective, this universal, this well-documented, why did we stop? The answer is not conspiracy. It is not the suppression of natural medicine by pharmaceutical interests, though that is a real phenomenon that deserves its own discussion. The primary answer is simpler and more human. Tea arrived. Then coffee arrived. These are the two beverages that replaced oxymel in every civilization that encountered them. Not because they are more effective medicinally. They are not. Tea has genuine health benefits, and this channel will discuss them. Coffee has genuine short-term alertness benefits, but neither of them does what oxymel does. Neither of them supports the liver and the immune system, and the blood sugar regulation, and the gut microbiome, and the respiratory system simultaneously in a single morning preparation. They replaced oxymel because they are simpler. Tea requires boiling water and a leaf. Coffee requires roasted beans and hot water. Oxymel requires selecting honey, selecting vinegar, selecting herbs, preparing the combination. In a world where time is commodified and convenience is the supreme value, the preparation that takes 20 minutes was replaced by the preparation that takes 2. This is not a conspiracy. It is just the logic of convenience, operating on a tradition that required some minimal knowledge and some minimal effort to maintain. The knowledge required to maintain oxymel is specific. You need to know about raw honey versus commercial honey. You need to know about raw apple cider vinegar with the mother versus filtered vinegar. You need to know which herbs to use and why. This knowledge lived in the monastery herb rooms, in the apothecary gardens, in the family kitchens where it was transmitted from mother to daughter to granddaughter as a matter of course. When the monasteries ceased to function as the primary healthcare system of European society, when pharmaceutical medicine displaced herbal medicine as the dominant paradigm, the herb rooms were closed. The gardens were left to grow wild. The recipes were put in books that stopped being read because the people who knew how to use them were no longer being trained. One generation to break a chain that had been unbroken for 3,000 years. One generation of not teaching, not transmitting, not using, and the knowledge became invisible. Not destroyed, invisible. It is still there. The manuscripts exist. The plants exist. The honey exists. The vinegar exists. The knowledge is waiting to be recovered, and it can be recovered in a single afternoon. Here is the simplest version. 3 ingredients, 2 steps, available in any kitchen. Ingredients: raw honey, genuine raw honey, unfiltered and unpasteurized, with visible pollen and natural cloudiness. The honey in the squeeze bottle in the grocery store has been heated and filtered and contains minimal medicinal activity. You want honey from a local beekeeper or a trusted brand that specifies raw and unfiltered. The color should be variable. Deeper honeys from buckwheat or wildflower sources contain more polyphenols. Raw apple cider vinegar with the mother. Look for unfiltered, unpasteurized apple cider vinegar with visible strands of mother culture in the bottle. The label should say raw and with the mother. Bragg's is the most widely available commercial brand that meets this standard. A local fermented food producer is even better. A medicinal herb, your choice based on your primary intention. For general health and immune support, thyme or rosemary. For digestive support and warming, ginger. For respiratory support, thyme and mullein. For calming and clarity, rosemary and lemon balm. For the closest version to the traditional Russian smetan, ginger, cinnamon, and clove. Basic preparation. Combine 1 part raw honey to 1 part raw apple cider vinegar. Stir until fully incorporated. This is your base oxymel. It will keep in a sealed glass jar in a cool, dark place for months. The antibacterial properties of the honey and vinegar together create a self-preserving preparation. Add herbs by one of two methods. Cold infusion method. Pack herbs into the honey vinegar base immediately. Seal the jar. Leave in a cool, dark place for 2 to 4 weeks, shaking daily. Strain. The resulting preparation is deeply infused with the herb's active compounds and has remarkable stability. Quick method. Steep herbs in warm water. Allow to cool. Add to the honey vinegar base in a ratio of 1 part herbal tea to 2 parts oxymel base. To use: 1 to 2 tablespoons diluted in 8 ounces of warm or cool water, drunk as a morning preparation, ideally on an empty stomach, 20 to 30 minutes before food. Start with 1 tablespoon. Some people find the acidity of apple cider vinegar requires adjustment. Starting with a smaller amount and increasing over 1 to 2 weeks allows the digestive system to adapt. The taste is complex, sweet and sharp, and herbaceous simultaneously. It does not taste like medicine. It tastes like something that has existed for thousands of years because people genuinely enjoyed drinking it, which is exactly what it is. Advanced preparation, the traditional monastic version. Combine ½ cup raw honey, ½ cup raw apple cider vinegar, 1 tablespoon dried thyme, 1 tablespoon dried rosemary, 1 teaspoon dried ginger, ½ teaspoon black pepper in a clean glass jar. Stir, seal, leave for 4 weeks, shaking every day or 2. Strain through cheesecloth. Bottle in a dark glass jar. The resulting preparation is dense, complex, fragrant, and deeply infused with the active compounds of all 4 herbs. It keeps for 6 months at room temperature, longer refrigerated. This is the preparation that Brother Giacomo made in the monastery in Umbria, that the Korean abbot made before morning meditation, that the palace physicians prepared for the Mughal emperor, that the Spiton vendor carried through the Moscow market in his copper urn. 3 ingredients. Infinite variations. 3,000 years of continuous use across every civilization that ever discovered it. It is still here. The bees are still making the honey. The apples are still fermenting into vinegar with the mother. The herbs are still growing in gardens and fields and the wild margins of roads. The preparation that every civilization before us knew. The preparation that preceded tea and coffee by 3,000 years. That was used by the greatest physicians of the ancient world. That was the morning ritual of monks and emperors and peasants and soldiers, is available right now in your kitchen tonight. Brother Giacomo finishes his morning preparation. He washes the clay cup. He returns to the cloister. The sun is rising over the Umbrian hills, turning the stone walls gold. He files into the chapel with the other monks for lauds. He is not thinking about ancient Greece. He is not thinking about Korea or India or Russia. He is not thinking about pharmacology or acetic acid or hydrogen peroxide or NF-kappa B. He is thinking about the day ahead, about the gospel reading, about the garden that needs attention before winter. He feels the preparation moving through him, the warmth of it, the way it settles the stomach and clears the head, the subtle energy that does not spike and crash the way caffeine does, but simply establishes itself as a steady undercurrent beneath the day. He has felt this every morning for 23 years. He has never known a morning without it. He cannot imagine waking up and not making it. It is simply what you do. It is simply what keeps you well. It has been what keeps you well for 3,000 years. Now come back to the present. The person in the city is finishing their coffee. They are already tired again. The brief clarity is fading. They are thinking about the next cup. They still have not heard of oxymel, but you have, and you can share it. You know something now that Brother Giacomo knew without knowing he knew it, that the Korean abbot knew, that the Mughal physician knew, that the spittin vendor knew as he moved through the frozen Moscow market, that the body has been sustained by the same three ingredients: honey, vinegar, herbs, for 3,000 years of human history, that these ingredients are not exotic or expensive or difficult, that they are available right now in every supermarket and natural food store and online market in the world. That the morning ritual you have been looking for, the thing that is supposed to replace the coffee dependency and the afternoon crash and the chronic tired that sleep doesn't fix, has been waiting for you in the same preparation that the monks were making before dawn. It takes 15 minutes to prepare a jar that will last you 3 months. You have 15 minutes. If you stayed with me from that monastery at dawn to this moment, if you followed Brother Giacomo and the Korean abbot and the Mughal physician and the spittin vendor all the way through, then you are part of the small community of people who take seriously the idea that the knowledge of previous generations deserves to be recovered. Go to the comments right now and type "Ancient Remedy." Not for me, for the community, for the signal to the algorithm that this kind of knowledge, old, deep, human, real, deserves to be seen by more people. That the person in the city reaching for their third coffee this morning deserves to know that there is something else, that there has always been something else. Ancient Remedy in the comments, and the links to the raw honey, the raw apple cider vinegar with the mother, and the herb kit, everything you need to make your first jar tonight, are in the description below. Everything sourced for quality, everything chosen because it is what actually works. Brother Giacomo's herb room is in the description. Go make something.